Hi everybody. Today I thought I'd show you a little warm-up drawing I'm going to do to get ready to draw for today. It's just going to be some kind of little character. I'm not sure what yet. We'll see what happens. So I like to draw like gnomes a lot, so maybe we'll do a little gnome guy. Start with kind of a circular shape for his head here, and I'm going to give him a great big nose. When you're drawing from your imagination, it's a little bit different than when you're drawing from life. When you're drawing from life, you want to try not to name things because that distracts you from actually looking at your subject. But when you're drawing from your imagination, you actually have to do the opposite. As you draw things, you kind of want to name them in your mind and think about what those things might look like and what shapes they would be made up of. So if I'm drawing an eye, I know there's an upper eyelid and an arch, and there's a circular part, and there's going to be a highlight in here somewhere, and maybe he's got some big bushy eyebrows. And kind of keep all these things light initially, because you can always change them later. We're going to give him a great big mustache, kind of a fuzzy curly mustache. Maybe he's got some slightly pointed ears here, big earlobe. Think a little bit what an ear looks like. If you're not sure what something looks like and you want to get it right, use a mirror, look at pictures, whatever you need to do. And maybe he's got an earring. We'll give him kind of a hoop earring here. And he needs a hat. Maybe it's got a little tassel on it. We'll figure that part out later. Needs a lower lip. And give him a beard. He's kind of looking a little bit more like Santa Claus than a gnome right now, but that's alright. We're just kind of making it up. We're going to give him a big belly. He's a well-fed garden gnome. He likes his veggies. And where his arms go here. Now here's a little trick I learned recently. If you draw the hands first and then connect the arms to them later, it's a little bit easier to get positioning and things like that. So he's going to be holding something. Not quite sure what yet. I have an idea, but we'll go from there. So now what I would do is I would bring that arm in like this. So this would be his forearm, there's his elbow joint, and there's his other part of his arm going back. So now it's real easy. I know that this is in front. This part here is going to be kind of this teardrop shape if you extended it through. And then this part will disappear behind here, but it would be more of a sausage or rectangular shape. So this side, let's say that he's feeling pretty proud of himself here, so we're going to give him a little hand down here on his hip kind of thing. And then this would go back like this to his elbow and to his shoulder. So again, teardrop shape here, rectangular or sausage kind of shape here, and then his elbow. Okay. And he needs a shirt, some buttons maybe. Maybe he's wearing like suspenders. We'll give him some suspenders. Needs one for this side too. And we're just going to kind of give him some short little legs here, kind of a wedge shape. And maybe we'll roll up his pants for him. And some big work boots. Alright, so what's he holding over here? Well, let's make this, since how this is a drawing video, let's make this a great big paintbrush. I used to have a logo, something like this. Alright, so that's our basic sketch. Now, there's two things we can do. We can come back and refine that a little bit more, make it a little bit darker, things like that. I think he needs a shirt sleeve here. He's been hard at work painting something, so we're going to give him some rolled up sleeve. And same thing on this side. Alright. So normally what I would do is I would go through and I would detail this out. I might lay a piece of tracing paper over it and kind of work out more of what's going on with him. But to keep this kind of short and sweet, I'm just going to take a brush pen. There's all kinds of these. This one's made by Pentalic. Somewhere I have, yeah, here we go. This is made by Micron. They work kind of the same way. This one's got a little bit shorter brush, a little bit easier to control. This one's got a longer brush to it. It'll give you a more feeling that's more like, you know, if you were to ink this with an actual brush and ink. So let's go with this one and see what we can do. All right. So I want to start here with his eyes. And the neat thing about brushes and pens when you're using them with ink is you get this really nice feel of a thick and thin line. I'm going to zoom in a little bit so you can see a little bit more what I'm doing here. Alright, so if you watch, I have this real light touch, the line's kind of thin, and then if I push hard it gets thicker, and then I can go thin again and thicker. So you're getting all that nice line variation that adds movement to your drawings. And you want to be a little bit careful. The Micron ones are a little bit easier to work with. They're not quite as loose and free. It's really important when you're inking things like this, especially with a brush pen, that you remember to turn your paper. And the reason for that is your wrist and hand only want to go in so many directions. But a lot of times your lines need to go, and curves need to follow something different than what your hand can do. So instead of trying to force yourself to make something unnatural, if you keep turning your page, you get a nice natural movement out of your hand and wrist, and that transfers into your drawing. It doesn't look like the lines are forced or contrived. They just look kind of natural and simple. Okay. And come down. Maybe he's thinking about saying something there. Yeah, we're going to keep going with his beard here. And if you're thinking about coloring anything when you get stuff like this, when you're drawing like this done, it's kind of important that you know whether or not your pen's waterproof, whether or not your pen's alcohol proof. So if you're going to come back with some alcohol markers like a Copic or a Prisma marker, you need to know that, because what's going to happen is if you go over this with some watercolors or maybe even some really thinned out acrylic paint or inks, what's going to happen is if it's not waterproof, then all this is going to start to bleed and smudge, and you're going to ruin your drawing, and you're not going to be too happy about that. So if you know ahead of time that your marker or pen that you've chosen is not waterproof, then you don't have a problem. Same thing with alcohol markers. If you've got a little bit of like 90% rubbing alcohol at home, you can put that on a Q-tip or something and rub that over a little test. You know, if you got a scrap piece of paper, you can do some lines and squiggles and stuff, and you just brush over that with the solvent that you want to use, whether it's water or it's alcohol, and you'll know right away if it's safe from those things. And if it is, then you can do a whole lot of coloring and layering if you know those things. I'm not sure. I haven't actually tested this pen, so I'm not entirely sure what dissolves this. I have another Pentalic pen that I really like to draw with. It gives me really fine lines, but I found out the hard way that it is not waterproof. I went to do a little bit of watercolor over top of it, and to my surprise, it all bled all over the place, so that was not a good thing. So the suspender comes way up here and follows all the way down to here. And then we've got this little bit here. This is a little metal clip that the rest of the suspender kind of goes through and holds it in place. Maybe we'll put a little, pretend it's got a little buckle on it. And then it'll come down like this. So as you're doing these things, you have to use your imagination, and you really have to think about, how is that made? What makes those things up? That's one of the great things about art, is it teaches you to think about how things are put together and how they work, and how you can make new things out of things that you're familiar with. And all that really comes from drawing from life. So, you know, if you take a few minutes and you want to draw something but you're not sure what, look around the room or outside for an object that at least somewhat interests you, and do a little, you know, 2 to 5 minute drawing of it, a little sketch. And what that'll do is it'll help you learn about that thing, and that's something then that you can use later when you're doing something like this. So I had a cousin, his name was Frank. He loved to wear suspenders, and every time I draw suspenders I kind of think about my cousin Frank. Might be why I draw him so often. I really like Frank. And that helps me remember how to draw them. Now I can stylize them a little bit. You know, like I made the little buckle here and I put these little dots in so they're adjustable. But you know, I could do it differently too. So we're going to change our drawing a little bit here. I'm going to make the folds on his cuffs of his pants kind of come down like that. His pants are a little long, or maybe those suspenders aren't working real well and they're starting to fall down. So then we're going to come and we're going to do this part here. I'm going to turn my page again, and do careful with this. If you haven't used a brush pen in a while, it takes a little bit of getting used to. They work. There's a lot to remember with how hard you're pushing and pulling. If you paint a lot, it'll come pretty quickly. If you don't, if you just basically draw with a pencil, when you move to a brush pen, there's a little bit of a learning curve that you have to go through. And you can very carefully, if you want to bold up a line, you can go back over it. Again, you have to be kind of delicate and careful with it a little bit, light hand. Maybe these are old boots. They need a little repair, so we're going to put a little patch on this one. And now we're going to move over here to this arm and hand. So we're going to start with this hand, I think. Yeah, remember I only put 3 fingers on this side, so I'm trying to remember to only put 3 on this one too. It's a little off, but there's a little shirt there. Now these are really long lines, so I'm going to start with this one up here first. Just kind of get these in here quick and out of the way. So these are nice and long. I'm going to freehand these. You could probably get in here with some sort of a ruler and do it that way. Anytime you use a ruler with ink, whether you're using a brush with it or a pen, you want to, if it doesn't have that little cork thing on the back, like this one. See, this one's a metal ruler, and it's got this piece of cork on the back. You can see how there's a gap between the edge and the cork. What that does is it gives you a space between your drawing and your pen, so that if any of that ink leaks in underneath the edge of the ruler, when you go to pick it up, it doesn't leave a big streaky mark. And we're going to go up here to this part. The tip of the brush here. And he needs a little paint on the end of his brush here, so. Okay. So from here, it's all about cleanup. Make sure your drawing is dry. Make sure that your drawing is nice and dry. And then you can come in with your kneaded eraser. And I do recommend using a kneaded eraser for this and holding off on any other kind of eraser, because the other erasers will definitely make things smudge more if things aren't dry. The kneaded erasers usually just kind of streak them a little bit if things aren't dry. If you're not sure if your drawing's not, dry or not, just kind of leave it sit for a few minutes and then come back to it, and then you can clean it up. Like, see, I'm waiting to come down here because I did those last, so I'll wait until I'm done with everything else. And just kind of give it a couple last looks here and see if there's anything else you want to do. Sometimes when you erase, your drawing gets a little bit lighter, so there might be some places you want to go back and touch up. I think I'm going to give him some little arm hairs here. How's that? Just to make him look a little more interesting. And yeah, you won't see any on that arm. And maybe he hasn't fixed this side of his shoe yet, so there's a hole here. His toe. Maybe there's another toe there. This could be all dark in here. Okay, so I hope you enjoyed the warm-up drawing, and I'll see you soon.